Hi, welcome to the second keynote talk. It's my great pleasure to welcome Vijay. Vijay asked me to keep this short, which makes sense because Vijay needs no introduction. He has done seminal work on matching and approximation algorithms, and he's one of the pioneers of algorithmic game theory. And he was my PhD advisor. And in particular, for this particular talk, I'm really grateful to Vijay for having stepped up at the last minute. He just landed this morning and is giving this talk now, which is, I don't know anyone else who could have done it. So, but it's going to be amazing still. So with that, over to Vijay.
Yeah, so thank you all for coming, and I wish to thank the organizers for inviting me, even as a last thought. Yeah, so it's exciting to try to sleep on the plane, but it happened, so no worries. I don't know if we need all the lights here, do we? Oh, good, thank you. So, so I'm talking about an algorithmic issue that arose in Google's AdWords market, but I'll be throwing in economic principles, whatever I know, every now and then. And I know that we have a very distinguished member from that community, so if I make any errors, he can correct me. Okay, so, sorry? Oh, yeah. There's a Vijay that will correct any errors. So I'm going to talk about the AdWords market of Google and other internet ad markets. And the AdWords market has always been described in superlative terms. That's what you always hear about it. It's brilliant, it's iconic, and it is unique. Really, really unique. And it is indeed unique, but it's still it is part of a much larger recent phenomenon, and I'll be remiss if I do not provide this as a background. This recent larger phenomena, and this recent larger phenomena is part of a gigantic ancient phenomena that of markets. Okay, which have been with us since prehistoric times and are an integral part of civilization and determine in big ways our lifestyles and our well-being, as was clear when the Soviet Union collapsed for whatever, for complex reasons, but one of them was their market structure. So markets have been with us for a long time, and they have undergone many changes through the ages. And the economists in the West, the father of modern economics is Adam Smith, who wrote his major tome, The Wealth of Nations, in 1776, the year US got its independence. They are correlated in some ways. Let's not go into all those details, but the point is that ever since economists have been studying markets for 250 odd years, and they still don't seem to tire of it. In fact, it's such a fascinating and complex and important phenomena that even to this day, an economist will look at a market and get really excited by it, and view it with great awe and wonder. The same way that a neuroscientist would view the brain, or a cell biologist would view the cell. very complex phenomena that are incredibly important. And for everybody here, there is if you don't believe me that markets are important, which you probably do, there's one market that's extremely relevant to your future. Nobody knows it? The job market, yeah. So now you know. Okay. So yeah, so economists have been studying many aspects of markets, equilibrium, pricing, efficiency, incentives, and so on. But in recent years, in the last 2 decades or so, there's been a huge revolution in markets. In fact, in the definition of a market itself, and we'll see what kind of a revolution it has been. And really new markets have been defined on the internet. Here are some major ones. Each one is different. And these are all huge markets. They occupy a huge fraction of the economy already. There's only 100% to be occupied, so it's a huge fraction of that, okay? And keeps growing. And they represent the massive impact that computer science has had on the economy. And I want to prove to you today that even the field of algorithms has had this massive impact. So we'll go to the Google's AdWords market right away with that background. And there are 2 big achievements of Google that should be noted. One is their achievement in how they organize search, how they thought about search, internet search, and what kind of ideas they put into that. And the other is how they thought about advertising. And by they, I mean the Google kids, as they are called, Page and Brin. So here is where you put in a search word like Vioxx, and here's where you get the search results, and here's where you get the ads. Okay. Everybody knows about that. Anybody who's not familiar with Google here? Everybody is, right? Okay. You've seen these kinds of pages, right? Okay. Well, I might ask an obvious question sometimes, but I don't know which one is not obvious, so might as well ask you all the questions. Or you can ask me questions, actually. I think we have 5 extra minutes, right? Okay. So their big idea in search was that they were not at all happy with the way search was organized in those days towards the end of the last millennium, 1996, 97, 98. So search engines like Inktomi and AltaVista were doing search based on text. So they would just look at, so if you typed in the keyword Honda, they would look for pages that have lots and lots of occurrences of Honda in them and say, okay, this is one important page for you. Okay, and so spammers, whoever wanted to be at the top of that list wanted to attract your attention for good or evil reasons. Okay, whether it was a valid business or shady business. Okay, all they had to do was put the word Honda 500 times in small print at the bottom of their page, and they'd be at the top of this search. Okay. So that's obviously never going to work much for very long. On the other hand, Google organized its search around the structure of the web. And they, in particular, came up with this notion of a page rank and algorithm based on spectral theory, whereby the authority of a page depends on the number of authoritative pages pointing to it. Okay, so it's a recursive definition, sort of. So a page becomes authoritative if there are lots of authoritative pages pointing to it, and so on. And you can see that would be much more relevant to keywords. I mean, producing search results for the keywords. So this turned out to be a very efficient way, moreover, in terms of time. within milliseconds they could answer questions, and that was a very important criterion for the Google kids. And then there was this question of how to monetize these search engines, because if you don't have a way of monetizing them, the thing was going to fail. And the other search engine companies were using banner ads, put banner ads at the top of the search page, not related at all to the search keyword. And whoever paid for the banner ads, their banner ads got shown, just like billboards at the street corner or ads on TV or ads in newspapers. So Page and Brin didn't like this because, first of all, it was not efficient to load such complex pictures and these pages. So it was inefficient. And they had a very deep sense of aesthetics. So they found this very distracting, that the page is being cluttered up by something that's not relevant to search. For them, search was like the ultimate thing. Okay, don't play with it at all. Okay, so this is what other search engines were doing. And then there was a company called GoTo.com, whose CEO was Bill Gross, a very smart guy. So they got formed in 1998, and his idea was, well, why not ask people to pay for ads for specific keywords, like for Honda, okay, and obviously the shady guys will not pay for ads, hopefully, and Honda company will pay a lot of money, and its ad will be one of the first ones shown. So it is a relevant search result as well as an ad. And so the other useless pages will be pushed downwards. Okay? So this is like two birds with one stone. You get relevant search results as well as you monetize your search engine. Okay? And again, the Google guys were not happy with it. They thought that mixing organic search results with ads is no good. Okay, search has to be pristine. So what happened was that in 1998, Google itself also got founded the same year. By the way, GoTo.com then failed, was acquired by Yahoo. It became a company called Overture.com, which is a very famous name in search. You might have heard of that, even though you may not have heard of GoTo.com. And Bill Gross made tons of money from Yahoo and so on and so forth. Okay, so Google got founded in 1998, and because these Google guys were not happy with any of these solutions, they had no way of monetizing this thing, and they were in deep financial trouble by 1999, and the investors were on their throats right away, asking them how they're going to change things. And so they thought about it, and they formed some kind of an AdWords market in 2000, but launched the real AdWords market in 2002 based on pay per click rather than display ads, and we'll go into that, what it means. And in 2004, Google went public. Their search engine was enormously successful, and so they had a huge valuation of, you know how much? 27 billion. Huge amount of money. And you know how much it is worth today, Google? Anybody? Sorry? 1 trillion and 72 billion. 1 trillion, no hundreds. We are not into the M and the B words anymore. We are straight into T. Okay. So, and what pays for Google? What pays for the 24/7 free search that comes to your desktop and your laptop and your iPhone? It is this Google AdWords market. So they spend billions of dollars on computers, on engineers, on bandwidth, on networking, and still report huge profits because of this market. And this has changed our lives, literally. So this is not, any small potato. This is it, right, in today's world. It has changed everybody's life here. So, so what makes it so powerful, this AdWords market? The point is that Google solved a central problem in advertising, namely how to match merchants with customers. Now, one way is you show tons and tons of ads to everybody, okay? Only a small fraction of the people will actually benefit from that ad, like billboard on a corner, a street corner, or these banner ads and so on. Okay, so it's hugely wasteful. Okay, the other way is if you really knew what the customer wanted, you could pitch them with an ad that's totally tailored to their needs. Okay, but how do you find out the needs of a customer? Right? How do you find out what goes on inside her head? Right? And the point is that the user's search query, when the user types in a search query like pizza or shoes or wine, and wine would give you the other wine, then Google knows what. But if you say wine 2017, it may be here. It is here, right? And that's because there are tons of engineers who are also working in Google to make sure that you get the right results, especially for CS people. Anyway, so that's how Google finds out what you really want and pitches ads totally relevant to you. And then the rest of the idea is just auction off these keywords to advertisers. Let them bid for it in a competitive way. And whoever bids the most will be, his or her ad will be shown, right? And so this highly undefined matching problem is transformed into a gigantic auction. And that's what we have here. Google is indeed the world's biggest auction house today. Billions of auctions worth billions of dollars every day. Okay, and that's how it happens. You get not only the search results, but also the ads. Okay, so now the question is, many advertisers are bidding for these keywords, specific amount of money that they'll pay to Google to be on the right-hand side. But how do you allocate keywords to advertisers? So the obvious way is that you should try to maximize Google's revenue. Okay, that makes complete economic sense. Okay, an economics person would give this solution because this is an efficient solution, because the ad goes to the person who needs it the most, who can make the most value in the economy from showing this ad, because he has bid the most. Okay. And so it makes complete economic sense, and it makes sense from the point of view of Google, that you should maximize Google's revenue. And that says that you should simply greedily display the ad of the highest bidder. Okay? And let's just, for this talk, at least for the first very large part, let's just assume that only one ad will be shown by Google. So you just show the ad of the highest bidder. And let's say that you will just charge the highest bidder the amount he has bid, okay? Or you could go with the second highest bid to make it incentive compatible, and everybody here knows Vickery auctions because everybody is attending wine. Okay, and this solution was being used for the first couple of years of the life of the AdWords market. And then they realized that something was very wrong with this solution. Namely, the advertisers not only specify keywords that they're interested in, and also the amount that they want to bid for each keyword, but also their daily budget. Okay, because think of a small-time advertiser like the pizza store in the corner, or a maid who wants one more job. Okay, they're not going to want to be flooded with ads and be charged lots of money in any single day, right? So they set a daily budget, saying, okay, I only want ads worth $50 or $1,000 or whatever. Okay, and so this also has to be taken into consideration, and it's important. So to show you that it's important, let's look at a very extreme example. So assume there are two bidders. One is bidding for book and CD and has bid $1 each. And one is bidding only for book because he doesn't sell CDs, but he has bid 99 cents for book. Okay? And both have a budget of $100 for today. Okay? We have no clue what's coming today, which queries are coming today. But let's assume that today 100 book queries come followed by 100 CD queries. Okay? Now, if you were going to give book queries, in comes this book query, and you want to give it to the highest bidder, obviously it will go to bidder 1. Same with the other 99 queries that come first. And then the CD queries start coming. Bidder 1 has no money left, bidder 2 doesn't want it. The whole query is wasted. In fact, the entire 100 queries are wasted. And the greedy algorithm has made only $100, even though if you knew what's going to come in the future, in other words, if you were to optimize in an offline sense, okay, then clearly you would give the first 100 queries to the second bidder, make $99, the second 100 queries to the first bidder, make $100, and the optimal would be $199. So basically it's a factor of 2. Right? So that's, I mean, when it comes to multi-billion dollars, that's not to be ignored. It's not to be ignored for many reasons. Because the fraction of low budget advertisers is very large. There's a very, very fat tail at the end. Okay? All these small companies for whom finally there's a way of advertising to customers. Okay, they don't have to. They cannot spend the kind of money to put down banner ads or put an ad in the street corner. Okay, with a billboard, but they can use Google to advertise to merchants. And so some venue has opened up, and there are tons of these guys, and their revenue has to be properly collected. They have to be properly assigned ads, queries, and so on and so forth. Right? So this is ultra important job. In fact, yeah. And so not only that, but if you want to design an algorithmic solution for this problem, it should be online, obviously, because you don't know what queries will come later. Google has to not only find the relevant search results, but also the relevant advertisers within a matter of milliseconds of the coming of the query. Okay? So it has to be really, really efficient. So the solution has to be very simple with very, very lightweight, almost no work to be done each time. Okay? So in, what was it, 2003 or early 2004, no, yeah, end of 2003, we got familiar with this problem from people at Google. This is when, Google's issues were beginning to be understood, and this was one of their issues. And we called it the AdWords problem. Okay, so we captured the AdWords problem in its simplest possible form so that we could study it algorithmically. And so that we could take it into an abstraction and in this clean form study it. And then later, this is, okay, who this V is I'll say it in a minute. And later once the solution was discovered, then we managed to add bells and whistles to the solution, and it worked for also the more complex problem that really arises in practice. Okay, and so this is Aranyak Mehta, and this is Amin Saberi. They were both my students at that time at Georgia Tech, and Aranyak Mehta is at Google now. Amin Saberi is at Stanford, and that's Umesh Vazirani. You may know him. He's at Berkeley. They're all in the Bay Area, and at this point I'm not far either. So That's where the work was done. Okay, and this is what the AdWords problem is. So just the bare bones of the problem. So assume n advertisers, assume they have equal daily budgets, $1 each. Assume each advertiser provides bids for specific keywords he's interested in, okay? Each one says, I'm interested in such and such and such keywords, and I'm interested in, and I'm willing to pay such and such and such. And to the search engine, which is Google, in comes a query online, and Google immediately has to select one of these advertisers and show it, okay? And let's assume that just for showing it, the advertiser pays his bid to Google, and that's how Google makes its revenue, right? Even though in practice it's a bit different because it's pay per click. Okay, what is pay per click? I'll say that in a moment. Okay, so that's the basic AdWords problem, and what we want is to do competitive analysis, which means that we want to compare the revenue produced by this algorithm in an online sense, okay, as the queries are arriving. Compare it to what? To the revenue of the best offline allocation, okay? So you, from hindsight, you look at all of the day's queries and see who should be given what, and look at what's the best revenue that can be accrued. And we want to be a good fraction of that, okay? And Greedy already has a competitive ratio of a half, okay? I showed you the example where it can be as bad as a half, but it's also easy to see that it should be at least a half. So it's exactly set at half, okay? So if you want to do better, you have to use more sophisticated algorithmic techniques, okay? And obviously, Greedy is simply using the amount that each advertiser has bid, right? The bid of the advertiser. So if you want to do better, you also should use some aspect of the budget of the advertiser. And clearly what you should use is the fraction of the, if you think about it for a minute, that's the obvious thing to use, is the fraction of the budget that the advertiser has spent today, so far. So in comes the next query, and who do we assign it to? Well, we'll look at each agent's bid and fraction of budget spent. And we want to assign queries based on both these parameters. And turns out that we managed to find the correct trade-off between them. And this is given by a special function f, which goes like this: 1 minus e to the minus 1 minus alpha, where alpha is the fraction of budget spent. So for each advertiser who has bid for this particular keyword, maybe it's pizza, okay, all the people who have bid for pizza, you compute the product of the bid and this function f of the fraction of budget spent, and you give this next query to the highest such bidder, okay? And this function, as you can see, starts at some level of 1 minus 1 over e and goes down all the way to 0. So as you have spent more and more and more of your money, the multiplier here becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. So if there's a person who has not spent much and there's a person who has spent a lot, okay, then clearly the one who has not spent much is going to get a huge advantage. He may get the query even though his bid is much smaller than the second guy, okay? But of course, if this guy's bid is huge, okay, then you'd be making a huge mistake by ignoring his bid. So, but this function takes care of both aspects in the correct way. And we can show a competitive ratio of 1 minus 1 over e with a small assumption that each bid is much, much smaller than the corresponding budget, which is completely normal and natural, because if your budget is $1,000, clearly your bids are not going to be $500, because you're only going to get 2 query words like that way, right? Your bids are likely to be $1 or $2 or something. So this is a reasonable assumption. And we also managed to show that this competitive ratio is optimal. So no online algorithm can do better, even if you use randomization. Our algorithm is completely deterministic, as you see it. But even if you use randomization, you cannot do better. And perhaps most importantly, the algorithm is very simple. All it does is one multiplication, keeps track of one number for each advertiser, namely the fraction of budget spent. And so you can, again, keep your running time down to milliseconds to answer queries and select ads. Okay? And that's why it was such a big deal in practice, because it's really, okay, what was needed, I think. Well, yeah, we know from hindsight. Yes?
So, like, I mean, I know the math that gives you this function, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about...
I'm coming to all that.
Like, just the intuition as to why...
Everything. Yes. It's a good part of it. And if it's not to your satisfaction, ask me in a moment. So, well, here's the intuition, but I'll come to the mechanics. So the point is that, yeah, is what I said, that comparing two bidders, one with who has spent a lot, one who has spent nothing, almost nothing, clearly, if this guy's bid is very, very large compared to this, you'll give it to him. Otherwise, you'll give it to him, so that he catches up with the guy who has spent a lot. And if you just think about it, so just for your to answer your question, if you think about it for a minute after the talk, maybe how the adversary will try to beat this algorithm. Okay, what kind of a query sequence and bids will the adversary try to give to this algorithm? You'll see that the adversary cannot do much. And that's a very useful exercise. I think that's the most important way to see it, but I'll give you other intuitions before that. But that's one intuition I have to sit down with you and give you on a piece of paper. Okay, so once this solution was obtained in this simple setting, which thankfully wasn't simplistic, we managed to extend it to the real problem, where you have multiple ad slots, bidders have different budgets, and you're using pay-per-click instead of pay-per-display, and you use generalized second price auction, which means that pay-per-click just means that if this guy, whenever the guy who has typed in the query word Vioxx, if she were to click here, at that point, Google makes money. Otherwise, Google makes no money. Okay, and generalized second price auction just means that this guy will be the highest bidder, the second highest bidder, and so on, because this is the most clicked position. This is the second most clicked position, and so on. And this guy will pay this guy's bid, just like in a second price auction. But this is called generalized second price because this guy will pay this guy's bid, this guy will pay this guy's bid, and so on. And that makes it not exactly incentive compatible, but that prevents what is called thrashing, where people are just experimenting with their bids because they want to say, okay, can we save a few pennies and bid a bit less? And then they keep going around searching forever. But with this idea of generalized second price auction, you don't have to do that. Okay, and so what happens here? What do you expect to find as the advertisers who are the most important ones for Vioxx? Vioxx is a drug. You know what Vioxx is, right? It prevents. It helps you against. Why are you laughing? From about 2005 or 2006. So Vioxx was a drug that was used. It was very, very effective against inflammation. So if you had great pain somewhere, you took Vioxx. Okay. Except that in around 2000, Merck is the company that produced Vioxx. they found, they did a study and they found that it causes huge cardiac problems. And so they pulled it from the market by 2004. And around this time, there were enough people who were badly injured by Vioxx, so that there were lots and lots of lawsuits on Merck. And who were the most important people who wanted to capitalize on these lawsuits? The lawyers, right? So whereas you would have expected pharmaceutical companies to be out here, because, you know, if you're typing a name of a drug, it's the pharmaceutical company. They'll say, okay, you know, this guy needs this drug, okay? And they'll pay probably 50 cents to Google for this ad. But the lawyers, they end up paying 20, 30, 40, 50, even $100 to be here. Why? Because if they get a valid customer, then they make $100,000 from them, okay? And that's good for the economy. Right, so it's the lawyers that win here in this game. Okay, so here's the question. So what I showed you was worst case analysis of an online, I just stated the result. I'll show you in a moment how it is done. But this is worst case analysis. But why bother with worst case analysis? I mean, you know yesterday's query words, and today's query words will not be very different. So you may not know what the next query word is, but you probably know something about the probability distribution from which the next query word will be picked, just by looking at yesterday's query words, right? So yeah, it is questionable, but it's not totally ignorable, the worst case model, because every now and then things change, okay? Like, you know, there are unforeseen events, you know, whether big cricket match, big smog, so you need gas masks, major cold weather in Delhi, so you need, sweaters. So suddenly, everything changes from yesterday, and you go into a worst case model. So what you really want is something that is both, on the one hand, good in the worst case, on the other hand, excellent if the queries come from a fixed probability distribution. And so for this purpose, we gave a somewhat useful heuristic. So define the effective bid of a bidder to be the bid as given by our algorithm times the weight of a bidder, which is adjusted depending on how much of his budget he has spent, so as to take it more in that direction of relying on the budget spent. And our conjecture was that this can be done, but our conjecture was also that if queries come from a distribution, then you can get 1 minus 1, little of 1. And this was proven by Nikhil here and Tom Hayes in 2009 by a different algorithm, LP-based algorithm. So yeah, and what's the impact of all this? Well, this general framework was used by many search engine companies, not only for these ads, but also ads for banner ads and ads for YouTube, TV ads, and so on. And the bid scaling, so basically this exact function may not be used, but some aspect of this function, namely give some precedence to the guy who has not spent enough, is being used by all the online ad companies. And the reason, of course, is that this is very fast, very low overhead, no communication needed, and so on and so forth. And then there were many algorithmic works that were pursued because the model can be changed in, along 100 different axes, and there were many researchers employed by search engine companies, and so on and so forth. Okay. So Finally, to answer in particular Nicole's question, I have to show you a bit about a lot about the theory that lies behind this algorithm. Okay, yeah, question. Thank you.
As an advertiser, if
Yeah.
I want to spend, if my budget is, for example, $100, so I will claim my budget is $2,000 to get rid of that function, which is.
Yeah, but then you might get queries worth $2,000, and you will have to pay it up. Otherwise, Google will throw you out of their
Okay,
business.
so okay. Yeah.
Right? So tomorrow you'll get 0 queries after that. Yeah. People have tried all those things and they've been thrown out. There's all kinds of click fraud and stuff, and people have been thrown out. At one point, people thought that Google is going to sink because of click fraud. You know what click fraud is. If not, I won't go into those small details, but somehow it has survived and become such a huge force. Yes, sir.
You mentioned weight of the bidder.
Yeah.
So that would be the amount budgeted or the amount spent?
Amount spent, yeah. Fraction spent, not the amount spent, the fraction spent.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so basically it's matching theory that's behind this whole thing. So why? So in the late 80s, there was this question that people were trying to attack. It was called online bipartite matching. And everybody knows what bipartite matching is about. It's about matching boys to girls or girls to boys, right? So think of boys as sitting here, and girls come one at a time. And each time a girl comes, you know which boys they are compatible with, and you want to marry off this girl right away, as soon as she comes, without waiting for a millisecond. Okay? So you marry her off. Okay? And another girl comes and you marry her off, okay? And another girl comes and there's a little bit of a disaster, right? She cannot be married because both those boys are already married off. But if we knew what was going to happen in the future, we would have done things a bit differently. So she remains unmarried because of some mistakes made in the past, right? That's very sad. So, but you don't know the future, right? You don't know the future. You want to take this action right away in milliseconds, as usual, right? So how do you maximize the size of the marriage? Assuming that in the offline case, once you know the whole graph, you could marry off all the boys and all the girls. So there are n boys and n girls. N girls come one at a time, right? So it's very, very easy to see that any deterministic algorithm will marry off half the girls, because it cannot leave a girl unmatched if the girl can be married. So it must give you a maximal matching. You know what a maximal matching is compared to a maximum matching. And so that's at least half the size of a maximum matching. And so it should give you a competitive ratio of at least a half. And it can be forced into exactly a half by the adversary. Okay, so you have to use randomization, and the algorithm turned out to be very simple. You simply randomly permute the boys once using a random permutation, and then each time a girl comes, you marry her to the highest available boy that she's compatible with. Highest available compatible boy. And then you get 1 minus 1 over e factor algorithm. So you can go up from 50% to 63%, which is good for everybody, right? And this was done in 1990 together with Dick Karp and Umesh Vazirani. Okay, so, and this algorithm is also optimal. No randomized algorithm can do better, okay? And you must see the resemblance between marrying boys and girls and the AdWords problem. Because this marrying boys and girls is just the AdWords problem where all the advertisers have budgets of $1 and the bids are either $0 or $1, depending on whether, so what's sitting there is the advertisers with budgets of $1, and what's coming online are the keywords, okay? And for each keyword, the advertiser has either a bid of $1 in case these boy and girl like each other, or the advertiser has a bid of $0, right? So he can only marry once, or he can only get one query, right? So basically that's the same as the AdWords problem. Wow. Okay, so this classic online algorithm, bipartite online matching, is a very special case of the AdWords problem, but the wrong case, because here bids are not small compared to budgets. Okay, so let's go to another very nice piece of work called online bee matching, which was actually attacked by Kalyansundaram and Prof in 1996. Okay, so in this matching problem, it's all about marriage again. But here you have massive asymmetries. Okay, so the point is that each girl can be married to at most one boy, but each boy can be married to at most B girls, where B is a very large number. Okay, but B is bounded, so you cannot marry the boy B plus 1 times, but you can marry him B times. Okay, and so again the boys sit around, and lots of girls come, and each time a girl comes, you know exactly which boys she can be married to. You want to immediately marry her off, but no boy can be married more than B times, right? Makes complete sense? And that can be seen as really some form of the AdWords problem the way we want to solve it. Namely, the budgets are very large, the bids are very small compared to the budgets, right? Because the budget is much larger than the bids, but it has this huge limitation that all the budgets are equal, all the bids are equal. Okay, and we want to get away from that. But let's see first of all how these people attack this problem, because we have to also answer Nicole's question. So what they said was that you assign the next bid, the next query. So the next query has been bid by many of these bidders, and the bidders have spent different amounts of money, right? Each one has a daily budget of B, but right now they have spent a different amount of money. Take the bidder who has spent the least and give this query to that guy. That's called balance. Okay, and that algorithm does 1 minus 1 over E, and that's also optimal against even all randomized algorithms. Is that clear what the algorithm is? Let me show you by an example. So here, suppose that the bids are $1, $1, $1, and $0 for book and CD, and 100 book queries followed by 100 CD queries are coming, and both have a budget of $100. Now, as you get these 100 book queries, balance will give equal amount of queries to both the bidders, right? Because it creates a balance between the amount of money spent by each bidder, and both bidders have bid for books, right? So $50 of this is spent, $50 of this is spent. Now come 100 queries of the second kind, and only 50 of them can be assigned to the first bidder. The other 50 go wasted, but we got 3/4 competitive ratio instead of just a half, right? So we are doing better than before, right? And why should this be 1 minus 1 over E? So how much time do we have? A lot, right? 10, 15. But somebody has a question, or actually, if you can ask me a question 1 or 2 slides down, that'll brighten up the whole story. Because I'm going to go into the algorithm in a deep way, and right. So what we did was we first took this proof for balance of Kalyansundaram and Prof, and we proved it using a different method, a much simpler proof using what's called a factor revealing LP. Okay, and then we did more jugglery to get the real algorithm. Okay, and for an arbitrary budgets and bids. Okay, so here's the new proof of balance, and I think if there's one take-home message from this talk, it should be this one. And I'm going to give you the entire algorithm with the entire analysis. That's why it'll be good to get one or two questions right away. So assume there are n bidders, and each has bid $1. Sorry, each has a daily budget of $1, right? And each has bid epsilon on particular query words. So all the daily budgets are equal, all the bids are equal. They are either 0 or epsilon dollars. And assume that opt is the offline best algorithm, and assume that it gets every bidder $1 worth of query words. Assume opt is that, and that's the main case. Take it from me, that's the main case. And we want to analyze against that case. And we have our algorithm balance, okay? So opt is n, and we want to show that balance, we know what balance does, right? We want to show that balance gets you at least so many dollars, 1 minus 1 over e of n, for each instance of this kind, and in particular for the worst case instance of this kind. Okay. Okay, I want to show you that. Okay, so we'll assume k is a very large integer, and let S1 be the bidders who have spent at most 1 over k of their dollar at the end of balance. Okay, and let the number of bidders in S1 be x1. So these are very bad bidders for balance, right? Because each one of them makes only 1 over k dollars, for k being a large number. So we must constrain x1 as thoroughly as possible. If you want to prove a good factor for balance, we must constrain x1. How do we constrain x1? Okay, remember that balance assigns the next query to the interested bidder who has spent the least so far, right? So I'm going to define the color of each epsilon dollars that's spent to be one of k colors, 1 through k. In particular, this epsilon dollars will be colored with color 1 if at the moment this epsilon was spent from this bidder, the bidder had spent at most 1 over k of his money. Okay? Okay, so this is the way balance ended up. These are the bidders who spent only 1 over k of their money. These are the bidders who spent only 2 over k of their money, and so on, where k is some large integer. And so this is S1. And these are all the queries that opt sent to S1. Remember that under opt, everybody spent their entire dollar. And here's this query that opt sent to S1, but balance did not send this to S1. Or maybe balance sent it to S1, but shouldn't balance at least assign this query somewhere? Because when this query came, the guy here in S1 to whom it was assigned by opt is still bidding for it. And he still has money left over because he has spent at most 1 over k of his money. So this query must be assigned somewhere. The question is, what should be the color of this query? So why did it not go to somebody in S1? Because somebody else out here was bidding for Q, and this guy had spent even less than 1 over k, right? So in other words, this query should have color 1. And how much money can have color 1? At most n over k. And hence we get the first constraint that x1 is at most 1 over n over k. And so we have highly constrained x1, right? And similarly, we can constrain x2, which is the bidders who have spent between 1 over k and 2 over k, and so on. So this must go here, and the amount of money of color 2 turns out to be this much, n over k for this lowest slab, and n minus x1 over k for the second slab. Okay? And having done that, what we write is an LP, which minimizes this total revenue, summation I over k of xi, with these constraints on x1 through xk. Okay, and that's a lower bound on the performance of balance on any of these instances. And that turns out to be this number, which is at least n times 1 minus 1 over e. Is there some intuition? This is only for the case of equal.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question was, so balance has that f of x function equals x.
Yeah.
Whereas your paper.
Yeah. And I told you that I'm going to just go this far because I think Nikhil will take me to task if I go any further. But we can sit down later and I can show you more intuition. Okay. And this factor revealing LP, which was found, we have Vangelis Markakis, who was one of the authors of this paper. This was a paper on facility location. So we gave this notion of factor revealing LP, which has given the best factor for several algorithms. This was done in the case of facility location. And basically, it's a good technique to know. Okay, and then more jugglery gave us the actual trade-off. Okay, and other techniques like the primal dual method and continuous optimization have also led to other proofs of the trade-off. Okay, I do want to switch gears now. I have 2 minutes left. I won't take more than 2. So basically, I want to just say that the theme that I started was these markets on the internet, and they're very different from traditional markets. The traditional markets, there's no computation, very little communication, and a very limited scope for a centralized solution. And they run in a distributed manner, and they resort to the power of the pricing mechanism, which is very powerful. For instance, that was, the pricing mechanism sends signals back between the buyers and the sellers and make sure that there is parity between the buyer and the seller, supply and demand. Okay, the prices are such that there's parity between supply and demand, and that's very, very good for the whole economy. That's the big secret behind free market economy, as opposed to, let's say, a centralized economy where somebody is pulling hundreds of thousands of levers and has no clue what to do at the end of the day, because things have to be reacted to very fast. And this is also called the invisible hand of the market that makes the economy so efficient and powerful. And this was a phrase used by Adam Smith. He wrote this very thick book, 1776, and this phrase occurs only once in his book, but is by far the most talked about phrase from his book. And then markets on the internet, of course, you have massive computational power, lots of communication is possible, and so you can add all kinds of features, and it's you are selling digital goods like an ad, as if these are as if this it's milk, honey, and sugar, right? And has made a huge difference in our lives already. And so clearly there's because all this computational power is going in, solutions are centralized, so there's a whole lot of opportunity to innovate mechanisms, algorithms, and make a big difference. So I hope I conveyed that through the study on the AdWords market. Okay, so here is an article that was published in New York Times last year in September. The title was "Goodbye Ivory Tower, Hello Silicon Valley." It's not about computer scientists, because there are already hordes of them in the Silicon Valley, but this is about economists, such as this guy, Peter Coles, who left Harvard Business School to go to Airbnb. And from this picture, it looks like he's just staying in this, he's happy to live off of this makeshift arrangement. Huh? Oh, you've been there? Yeah, Gagan Goyal is steeped in all kinds of startups. And this guy says that the Silicon Valley is an absolute candy store for economists. Okay. And then in this article also there was a quote from Hal Varian, who's Google's chief economist, who moved to Google in the early 2000s, probably 2003 or 4. So he was a chair of the economics department at Berkeley and also the dean at one point, and has written some foundational books. But then he was attracted by Google, where he made a huge difference, actually. And he said that he thought this was fascinating years ago when he moved, but it's still getting more and more fascinating. Okay, so we have a huge revolution here at hand, and I am sure we are not at the end of this revolution. Okay, I can give you proof if you want. We are not at the end of this revolution. I think you are one of the proofs, right? Gagan is steeped into startups of this kind, but there are huge markets waiting to be moved into the internet. You might already know of some. Yes? The housing market, which is trillions and trillions of dollars, and is being hijacked by middlemen and middlewomen who take away 6% every now and then to do almost nothing but give you big bunches of paper that you don't read, and lawyers that so basically there's a lot of innovation needed, a lot of work needed to make this whole thing streamlined. So yeah, and Kamal Jain, who was my former student, is hoping to make a big difference in this market. So thank you all for coming. And yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, in the beginning, you told that every company want to pop up their website in Google query. For that case, few companies follow some unethical way. In this regard, you gave one example too, like Honda puts.
If your search engine is not smart enough, then you can do strange things.
So Honda company may put several times Honda keyword.
Yeah.
So they can pop up, but Google algorithm can detect those things. But suppose this Honda keyword is replaced by some noun keywords, and means suppose website is structured. Okay.
Sorry?
Website is all okay, no problem. In structured website, in a structured website, if Honda keyword is replaced with any noun keyword, means noun of any sentences, nouns of any sentences, then means after replacing with Honda keyword, if they hide those content, is it possible to detect?
So Google also have other very important features. They look at very important features of the web page.
Okay.
One is called quality.
Okay.
Okay, and that would be classified as a low quality web page and will be thrown away. Okay. So that's why they have I don't know how many thousands of engineers sitting there and working on the ad business. Oh, sorry, on the search business.
Okay.
Otherwise, they would have just had this crank, and they just crank up their algorithm, and they need 3 people to run the whole company. But no, they have thousands of people for that reason. So they are trying to perfect their art of search.
Okay.
And so, but the big issue with spam was already taken care of with PageRank.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, at a high level, what changes when the bidders have different budgets? And what changes in the algorithm?
No, you just look at the fraction of the
So
spent
nothing
budget.
changes when
But you have to do the proof with that.
I see. But the algorithm remains
proof
the same.
changes quite a bit, a lot. it's not straightforward. That's why I never went into it, because we don't have the time, and maybe.
But the algorithm remains the same. I mean, it says,
Sorry?
But the algorithm remains.
Algorithm is what I told you. Use that f function. Yeah.
I have one.
Yeah.
Regarding the balance, would it not be right to also decrease the balance of a bidder, the weight of a bidder or the balance of a bidder, if he has also bid for other keywords?
That's another algorithm. This is not their algorithm. Okay. You have to keep the algorithm very simple, otherwise you won't be able to analyze it. And I doubt you can analyze this one, because you have no clue what's going to come. They may not be useful, what else he has bid for.
Okay. Because
you have to keep it very, very simple to analyze it. Okay? And you have to keep it very simple to use it. If you start looking at all these things, you'll be taking forever to select the ads. Thank you. Yeah.